put off by how long this video is, don't worry, I try to jam-pack my videos with as much content and as much detail as I possibly can. Anything I feel I can comment on and that I feel you might be interested in, I pretty much put in the video. I try not to repeat myself and talk fairly fast. I got this either as a present or I got it on discount, so I did not pay very much money for this and am thus not bitter on account of that. Hoodwinked movie review. I'm gonna put up the timer, excuse me, and there we go. Happy holidays. Plot. Rashomon and the Fairy Tale of Red Riding Hood do acid together, and this is the result. Seriously though, Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf, the woodsman, and Granny all tell the police the events that led to their encounter, which plays out very similarly to the fairy tale. And unrelated to the review, Twin Perfect recently put up part 1 of Apologism for Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. Their previous apologism for DCEU stuff and for Alien franchise stuff are really the only videos of theirs I didn't particularly like and or agree with the content of some of their other videos on films. Even if it didn't all feel like contrarianism, I do think good points are made in this part 1 video. However, the argument that, hey, movie Batman has killed a few other people and over 7 movies it does add up to dozens is a very silly counter to Batman kills dozens of people in this one movie. Yes, he's killed in the comics and in the past, but it's not the Batman we want in the movies today. Batman also once turned into a baby and still fought crime. I doubt Twin Perfect would defend that appearing in one of these movies. And even if this Batman is an interesting take on the character, which I do think he is, perhaps even the best in a lot of ways, a lot of fans, myself included, don't want this Batman to be part of the Justice League or an MCU-style franchise, both of which were clearly the idea with the film. You know, there's supposed to be an upcoming Batman solo film, and I forget if that one is supposed to be, you know, just outside of the rest of the DCEU, because apparently they're like gonna do a different Joker, and I mean it's possible that that just means that there's, you know, they're gonna retire, which might be a good idea, the Jared Leto Joker, but the Jared Loker, but it definitely sounds like there are gonna be things about that movie that are very different, and maybe that's the place for this kind of Batman, definitely not the Justice League. Yes, we accepted Nolan's Batman killing more easily. We knew from day one that Nolan's Batman wouldn't be in the Justice League, and that's part of the problem. Snyder was clearly jealous. He wanted to outdo the darkness of Nolan's Batman and also get very close to, because Nolan's Batman was incredibly popular, and as such, they really wanted to do more of that so there'd be an audience already, but that was never going to work that well for Justice League, and that's, you know, one of the many problems with this Justice League. And Snyder also forgot he wasn't directing another Watchmen film. Again, the darkness of that film and that comic work for them. You know, it's not like Alan Moore's, you know, Alan Moore has also written other comics, and yeah, his Killing Joke, Batman and Joker work within the context of other comics, you know, but if you try to fit in, you know, part of the Watchmen is if you imagined more realistic version of how it would go with these costumed characters, you know, yeah, some of them put on these outfits because they got off on it. Some of, you know, some of them ended up going crazy. They have really bad interpersonal relationships, and ultimately, you know, is what they're doing even doing any good? You know, that's what that's about, and that's not really, yeah. And I do think that the issues are explained well in this part 1 video, but not at all in the film, and that's, again, that's part of the problem. And just have Batman say, if he started to kill the human race and got through even 1%, that would be unacceptable. Because what he says in the movie, the reason everybody interpreted is the way it is because it sounds like he meant the thing that everybody interpreted it as. And most importantly of all, I hardly think your viewers did anything to deserve seeing Frank Miller with that long hair. And the rich just got more tax cuts. Every time tax cuts for the rich come up, you hear someone rich say, oh, they'll use them to create jobs, it'll improve the economy. You know, supposedly more than that money would if it was divided among more people instead of in the pockets and, more to the point, offshore accounts of the rich. Tell you what. You know Brewster's Millions? I only watched it once or maybe a few times, and last time was years ago. I don't know if it holds up. But the concept is clever. Let's take some inspiration from it. If the rich can spend millions and manage to give jobs and improve the economy to the extent that experts and studies say those money would, in more hands, poorer hands, you know, you get 30 days. If you can't create more jobs or improve the economy, you give up the tax cuts. And I don't mean just these most recent tax cuts. I mean all tax cuts for the rich that don't directly, demonstrably lead to better lives for those not rich. Now, on plot. I absolutely love this movie. Sarcasm, attitude, this ain't your granddad's Red Riding Hood, can be enjoyed by children and adults alike. Unfortunately, the directors haven't gotten to direct much else, and, you know, in part, this wasn't that positively received, especially by critics, and that's too bad. I really hope they get more work. I'll watch it. And the movie has tons of parodies of big movies, other pop culture, real-life products, and on. And there are hilarious songs, various popular genres, including rock. Normally, I talk about the characters in this portion of the video, but I don't want to give away any of the subversion going on with them. Those notes are all in the spoiler and thoughts section. And this has great scenes of action, comedy, suspense, tension. And, you know, I already mentioned Rashomon, so it goes between these different situations, and each time we get something compelling, you know, and there's something, it's, whenever you do a non-linear time, I'm sorry, I'm starting a sentence, and I just did it again, and again. Whenever you do a non-linear timeline, one thing you have to be careful with is, are the audience going to be more annoyed that we cut to something else and they don't get to see how that scene plays out just yet, or how we got into this situation? Are they going to be more annoyed by that than interested in seeing this new scene and the scene after that, and on and on? And yeah, they absolutely managed to here. There's always something interesting in the new scene, and the movie never gets so, like, you know, there's, I'm not going to say it's never convoluted, because there are definitely things in this where you're like, that seems very conveniently, you know, but it doesn't get it doesn't get too convoluted, and it doesn't get overly complicated to the point where you can't place who or what and when and such. It actually does a really great job. there's a yeah, I think basically every time we cut to a new retelling of the events, there's a little, you know, sound or visual clue that places, you know, this is in the timeline that we've already seen. You know, this is when that takes place within that timeline. And yeah, and that's not something every movie with an unrelated timeline needs to do, but it does really work well here. And I've seen some people say, oh, it's like Tarantino. I wouldn't quite. His is like really super nonlinear, where this is mostly it's that first you get a real quick, you know, a quick version of the story as it basically as it is in the fairy tale, pretty much. And then you see more, basically, each of the characters involved. You know, Granny, Paul Bunyan, the Wolf, and Red Riding Hood. All of them get to tell their side of the story, so we basically know that it's, you know, it is overall the same events. You know, it never cuts to like a completely different day, for example. And you know, which, yeah, you know, Reservoir Dogs, it's been a while, but if I recall, the very first scene is them talking at the coffee shop, and then it cuts to Mr. Orange having been shot. And I'm not sure we know for, you know, like in great detail exactly how long passed between that, but yeah, I think it is, isn't it days? Because they spend days going over the plan and such. I, I think it's more than one day anyway, but yeah. Animation. Now, the animation here was relatively inexpensive, and as such, it doesn't look all that good, and if that is something that bothers you, it will bother you when watching this. Personally, I find that the good hugely outweighs the bad, but I'm not going to pretend that the, you know, by the standards, yeah, you know, I mean, this didn't come out, you know, just yesterday. It came out, and I want to say 2005, but by 2005 standards, it's not that good. By, yeah, and that is just, it's either really going to bother, you know, watch the trailer and you'll see the trailer doesn't make it look as if it's better. You know, sometimes with the trailer they, you know, it's just a short little segment. Maybe they even put, even if it's independent, maybe they put money aside to make it look even better there than, no, in this it's very representative. Now, one of the directors is also an actor, so he recorded his face as he performed lines to tell the animators what he wanted for the acting, and that really helped a lot. This is highly expressive, you know, face acting for this, and you know, that's not unheard of for this kind of thing, but it really does, you know, so sometimes there won't be a ton of movement within the frame, but the facial expressions, and certainly this is not, you know, what it maybe lacks in visual presentation, it very much makes up for in the audio and the writing. It's a very fast-paced movie, and it's never boring. It's consistently funny. It is hilarious. You know, this is, I'm not sure, it's been years since I last watched it. I don't remember if I watched it more than once back then, but, you know, I hadn't forgotten very much of this movie. That's almost everything I could, you know, if you put me on the spot before I watched this again and asked me to explain the events of the film and describe the characters and such, I would have been able to do a pretty good job. And yet, it made me laugh again, and I got excited in suspense scenes and such. Now, this is straight from Wikipedia. Hoodwinked was among the earliest computer-animated films to be completely independently funded. Working apart from a major studio allowed the filmmakers greater creative control, but also restrained them economically. Due to the film's small budget, its animation was produced in the Philippines with a less realistic design inspired by stop-motion films. And when I first read this, I was like, stop motion? I don't remember. It's not quite stop motion. It is just, yeah, inspired by. It's not that stilted. And I'm not hating on stop motion, but by today's standards, you know, if it really was stop motion, you know, no. But, and, yeah. And the Weinstein Company did not sign on as the film's distributor until near the end of production. While the company had made many roles recast, it otherwise made few changes to the film. And I would say it doesn't feel so controlled and like, what's it called? You know, when you do the group, yeah, tested for appeal and all this kind of thing. And I'm not going to be making any Weinstein jokes. This is a kids movie. And more Wikipedia. Hoodwinked was one of the first independent computer animated films to be produced without the aid of a distributor. It was produced on a budget of less than $8 million, significantly less than the typical computer animated film's budget. And the cost of computer animation software had only recently decreased to a price that was accessible to more than just major studios. And according to producer David Lovegren, 6 or 7 years ago, the idea of doing Hoodwinked as an independent animated feature would have been impossible. And the filmmakers only made the film independently by necessity, and Corey Edwards has said it's not a model to be followed. It was a once-in-a-lifetime, seat-of-your-pants kind of thing that just barely came off. However, he added that the process was worth going through to get the film made and encouraged aspiring filmmakers to be willing to follow it. And they actually, the DVD has this making of kind of thing wherein they do talk about, you know, part of the, you know, the film really wants to encourage kids to follow their dreams, and that's kind of what the filmmakers did, and they're, yeah, and it worked out. It's you know, it's, again, love this movie. And I'm not going to be comparing it very much to other animated stuff. I honestly watch very little animated, yeah. And again from Wikipedia, distancing the film from what producer Preston Stutzman called the candy-coated, brightly colored pastel worlds of other CG animated films, an attempt was made to bring an organic look to the film, and dirt was rubbed into the colors. The Nightmare Before Christmas was cited as an inspiration for the filmmakers to try to bend the characters' shapes into extremes, and many other choices unconventional to computer animated films were also made. And you can very much tell. It worked out really well. For example, one of the woodsman's eyes was made bigger than the other, and Red was given only 4 fingers so as to make her look more like a doll. And producer Katie Hooton explained that CG in the past has been pushing the envelope to make things look more realistic, but Hoodwinked take things back to where CG looks a lot more like a cartoon. And yeah, that definitely, and yeah, it works out. It's that kind of thing where you have to be careful how far the movie knows that it can't have, like, you know, it isn't showing off the CG the way a lot of early, you know, live action integrated CG films really tried to show off to impress you, and they couldn't really, you know, as an audience, I remember those days. Even back then, we were like, this doesn't look completely convincing, you know. And yeah, this one, it was a wise decision. Now, let's see. Pre-production. The filmmakers found independently producing the film to have both benefits and challenges. Although they were given a great amount of creative control by the executive producer Maurice Canbar, their small budget kept them from making potentially beneficial changes to the story once production was underway. Timecodes related that money doesn't just buy you more talent, more machinery, it also buys you flexibility on a story level. At Disney, if they don't like the third act, they just throw the whole thing out and reanimate the whole thing, even if it's finished. We had no such luxury. And so in a way, you're watching our first version of the movie, and I guess you can kind of tell. I don't think it. I mean, you could always. What is that thing they said in a Star Wars prequel DVD extra? The movies aren't released; they escape. You know, no matter what, and any creative, you know, I don't like using the word artist because some people think, oh, that's not art. Any person who does creative expression will tell you they always wish they could have changed just at least one more thing before, you know, no matter what. There's never enough time and resources and such to make it absolutely perfect. I could see how maybe the climax could have been even better, but I don't think it needed to be. I wasn't disappointed with it at all. And knowing ahead of the time their inability to alter the film script once animating had begun, an effort was made by the filmmakers to finalize the script as much as possible before the start of production, which is not a common practice for studio-produced animated films. And that you can very much tell. This has been very... They really worked through all the... Yeah, they nothing feels like it was just thrown in, or yeah, and again, it doesn't feel like they just, you know, they actually they invited some neighborhood kids over and showed them parts of the film, and based on their reactions they or showed them, yeah, I don't remember, you know, they and based on those reactions they did make some, you know, they made decisions on what to keep and what not to, and those decisions really paid off. But it doesn't feel like you had just a bunch of people in a room, you know. So yeah, sometimes it gets really, it ends up kind of generic and crowd pleasing instead. And turning away from the well-known archetypes of the Little Red Riding Hood characters, the filmmakers continue to look towards non-linear crime dramas for inspiration instead. And producer Preston Stutzman explained, the whole film is about surprises and secret lives. And then there's a bunch of stuff about the characters that I really, in hindsight, should have put in the spoiler section. The police officers were written to come across as everyday guys, and Corey Edwards has explained the decision to make 3 of them pigs was not politically motivated. This is not Fritz the Cat. And let's see. Now, Corey Edwards, excuse me. creators chose to approach the film predominantly as an action comedy, which very much shows, instead of as a typical animated film, and wrote the script to appeal to audiences of any age, like many of the films produced by Pixar or Disney. Roadrunner, Rocky and Bullwinkle, and The Muppets have all been cited as inspirations for the film. Very much shows. There's at least one direct Roadrunner, a Roadrunner gag used in this. And an attempt was made to distance the film from Shrek and other similar themed films that have been recently released by excluding magic, wizards, and fairies from the film. And I honestly, is there any animated Disney feature film that doesn't have any magic? I mean, I wouldn't know about any releases after like the, I guess 97 or so, but especially the ones based on fairy tales. I mean, even the Hunchback has at least a little, it's which a lot of people say is to its detriment. And yeah, and at this point I have to definitely watch, I probably already mentioned it, but definitely watch Lindsay Ellis's video on the Hunchback of Notre Dame film. That's, yeah, amazing analysis. Corey Edwards also strived for a different style of humor than Shrek, choosing to make his film more family-friendly and less of a satire. And working out of Tony Leach's apartment, Corey Edwards sketched the film's storyboards, Todd Edwards wrote the script while simultaneously writing the songs, and Leach edited the story reel on his Mac computer. And yeah, producer Sue B. Montgomery showed test screenings of the story reel to children in her neighborhood and gained input from their reactions. The filmmakers had been considering removing Japheth, but chose not to when he proved popular at these screenings, and the children also particularly liked Twitchy, which led to the expansion of the character's role. And I'm really glad. Twitchy definitely, I'm glad there's as much of him in the film as there is. They were considering removing Japheth. That's, yeah, sometimes you're just too close to see straight when you're working on something. I love Japheth. I actually, if they made like a spin-off completely centered on Japheth, I would watch that. I would watch the crap out of that movie. Length. Now, this is 1 hour 17 and a half minutes with end credits and 1 hour and 13 and a half without. And that's, a lot of animated feature films are around that length. And I forget if the Disney, and I've barely watched any Pixar, also are, but certainly otherwise. And I do think it's a very appropriate length. The movie keeps to a very nice pace. At the very, very start, it's just, you get the retelling of the fairy tale, and then you have this police procedure, almost CSI opening kind of, from where they're like, looking over evidence and talking about what might, and then gradually we get the retellings, and those start off as just, the very first one starts off as just, not too much conflict here, and things are going pretty well, and it's not super fast. But then it starts ratcheting up the tension, and things start moving fast, and then, it's not fast every second of the rest of the retellings, but certainly the further you get into the retellings overall, the bigger the scope gets, and the more fast paced and such. And really, yeah, when by the end of the retellings, it's pure awesomeness, and just, yeah, it's well worth the wait, and it doesn't feel like you didn't get enough. It builds to that. If the movie had literally opened with, you know, the last of the retellings, it would simply have been too, you know, I don't know, at that point you kind of, you know, that's kind of what a movie like Avengers Age of Ultron does, but that movie is also very, very different from this one. Rewatched for research. I rewatched the first Shrek as, yeah, and honestly, I love this movie more than I love the first Shrek movie. And you know, when I first sat down to watch this, I'm not sure I was thinking in those terms, but I wouldn't really have imagined that I would love a movie like this more than Shrek. You know, a sort of genre, yeah, a movie that takes fairy tales and does something very different with them. I wouldn't have thought, but yeah, you know, overall I find this to be faster, wittier, and in a number of ways more clever. And where Shrek is a buddy comedy with romance and has elements of a traditional fairy tale, an adventure story with saving a princess, dealing with a dragon, an ogre is involved, etc. This is a police procedural with, you know, witness statements, and yeah. And Shrek 1's catchy songs are nearly exclusive, like needle drop, you know, pop culture music. And the only exception I can think of is the Robin Hood song. That almost must have been written for the movie. Oh yeah, and the Duloc, obviously, the which the kids' voices sing, but I think those are it. And you know, some of them are like covers of pop songs, but they're pop songs. You know these songs, and honestly, you know, yeah, I was, you know, humming along, tapping my foot as they played, but you know, overall afterwards, it does feel a little empty. It feels very crowd pleasing. Like, you know this song, you like this song, right? So yeah, and this, maybe I should say, almost just to hedge my bets, almost all original ones. Honestly, if there's a song in this movie that isn't original to this movie, or even a piece of music, I think, maybe not completely that. There might be like ones that are at least very similar to, but yeah, certainly the songs, and there are a lot of them, I think are all original. And yeah, and that's also something where, you know, but that's also, Shrek isn't supposed to be too similar to those others, but you know, if you compare it to one of the Disney musical ones, you know, your Hercules, Hunchback, Aladdin, stuff like that, you know, yeah, it's about the same amount of songs, and it is the musical kind of thing where characters break out in song, and yeah, you know, rather than us hearing, which, again, you know, Shrek, there's almost no characters who stop and just sing, except for the very ending. Now, I've only watched Shrek 2 one time. I barely remember it. Shrek Forever After is fine. I like some of the moves they made with that one. Never watched Shrek 3. I might at some point. I wasn't really actively avoiding it as such, though from what I hear, maybe I should. And I may do videos on the series, including more on Forever After in the future. Now, from Wikipedia, structurally the film was inspired by nonlinear crime dramas such as Rashomon. Very much can tell, and you know, again, I watched the original also. You know, it's yeah, Akira Kurosawa, brilliant. And then it also says, and Pulp Fiction, and again, I don't really, yeah, I honestly just disagree with that. It's much less, and again, love Pulp Fiction, love Tarantino, but yeah, with that, it is much more. I mean, you know, the first time you watch that movie, yeah, I shouldn't spoil it, but and I do want to note what I said about Reservoir Dogs wasn't spoilery either. That happens in maybe the first 15 minutes or so. Mr. Orange having been shot. The Yeah, Pulp Fiction. You open on the couple talking in the diner, and then they start robbing the diner, and then it cuts away, and for a while, you're not even sure if they are going to cut back to that diner robbery, and it has a very different effect. You know what? If there's like a fan cut of this movie that turns it into Pulp Fiction, overall chronology, I watch that. Yeah, and it was released shortly after the first two installments in the successful Shrek series, which accentuated the fairy tale parody genre of which it is a part. The film, however, intentionally deviated from that series in its style of humor and in certain plot elements. This was in part based on Corey Edwards' concerns over exposing children to the high level of cynicism often found in the genre. Shrek 1 literally opens on Shrek whiting his crappy ass with a page from a fairy tale book. He's crapping all over the fairy tale that we're supposedly about to see. This movie has nothing like that. And, Shrek 1 hates and wants you to hate all things Disney. The fairy tale adaptations, Disneyland. Again, I love Shrek 1. I'm not sure it's necessarily the best to watch for actual kids. It's basically something for people who grew up watching the fairy tales and have since gotten more cynical. But yeah, I'd show this movie to children, but I would not necessarily show Shrek, except to people who are, if it's a kid who's already really cynical. But yeah. And yeah, this movie retains a lot of the charm, sweetness, and child-friendliness of the non-cynical of the modern versions, and not the original. If you have if you want to read fairy tales to your kids and you haven't already read the ending and you want to read them the original Red Riding Hood, read the ending before you do, because it does not end the way a lot of people think it would. People think that the ending they know is the original ending. It is not. Back then, they weren't really thinking, oh, we have to protect the children from violence. They were more like, if we don't scare the crap out of our kids, they will walk in front of traffic. So we got, that's another thing. A lot of people have, nostalgia for a movie like Pinocchio, the 1940 Pinocchio. I personally never did. Watch it again. It's actually really, it's so determined to scare the crap out of children about every single, this is the horrible thing that will happen to you if you talk to strangers, if you trust a stranger, and such. It's, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad movie, but there are a lot. I'm not sure I'd want to show it to kids. That's, yeah. I mean, there are movies that have similar themes that aren't trying to terrify children. It was very clearly an active decision. There's also, I once rented the DVD from the library and they made these short films. There were also there's I'm no fool with fire or something like that. And basically it's Jiminy Cricket just insulting children and telling them you're an idiot if you don't do exactly this. And I'm not saying children should play with fire, but I've never found insulting and scaring children to be all that efficient. People tried to scare me as a child. It didn't make me not do the thing. It made me... It actually made me very contrarian, and I try not to do stupid things, but not if people scare me. Actually, I think there were distinct times where people tried to scare me out of doing something stupid, and I was thinking, I'm never going to do that. but I would say something back to them that would make them think I would do it, just so I could scare them back. I was a rotten little child. And I also rewatched Looney Tunes Back in Action, and I said pretty much everything I have to say about it in my thoughts video for Earthworm Jim 1. But again, also, for those who aren't going to watch that or whatever, I do really, really love that movie as well, and it is a far cry from Space Jam, which is... I mean, you can enjoy Space Jam as like, oh, it's a really bad movie and we're having fun watching a bad movie, but you can't enjoy it on any other. It is a terrible movie, and Back in Action is legitimately a lot of fun. And those are the only films that I own or otherwise have free access to that might be relevant to this that I was willing to rewatch. I do own an old VHS copy of Space Jam. I don't know why either. And I am not watching that anytime soon. Let's see. How do we... That's how. And... let's see. Considering whether or not I'm going to go through the reviews and such. Let's see. Scrolling. There we go. For some reason, it's not always interested in scrolling. Yeah, I'm just gonna jump directly into thoughts. I honestly, I would just constantly be saying, no, I don't agree with that. Overall, the reviews are online. You can read them for yourself. Just imagine me constantly, like, tell you what, if you, like, cut out from this, I'm just gonna say, no, I do not agree with that. Just cut that and play it over on like a loop as you read the reviews, if you do read the reviews, which I don't necessarily really recommend. I don't think they're just... way too many of them are just... yeah, I don't get it. But, a lot of people do find my voice very soothing. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face. Moving on to thoughts. Please note that this video has spoilers for the subject. Now, there we go. I don't know how much time it's going to take to read the stuff I wrote myself. I did copy all of the IMDb quotes into my notes here. And if I get to them, I will probably do at least my favorite ones of them. And I'm probably going to try to do the voices, and apologies in advance, because I cannot imitate all of them all that well. I will not be singing. Notes taken while watching. There we go. Great reveal on Wolf's head from the side while still wearing the mask, before the mask is torn off, with just, Red pointing out all these parts of Wolf that are clearly distinctly non-Granny, and then it just cuts to, like, from the side of the two of them, and you see his, this long wolf-like head with the mask on the very front. I'm really glad we got to see that angle, because he really does look absolutely ridiculous with that. Just it's so, and that's also, it's the movie pointing out how distinctly different they look. These, the movie could easily have made them look much more similar in, yeah, the models and such. And Wolf calls her Red Foo, and yeah. And I love that they open on the kind of superficial view of what happened, and it is more or less the fairy tale's ending playing out fairly straightforward. They have a few lines in there that are distinctly not from there, but otherwise, and certainly the first time you watch that, especially if you don't know going into it that there's going to be all this other stuff going on, you hear them talking about you know, yeah, don't they already even then mention, like, yeah, the wolf says, I'm taking you down, I'm taking Granny down, and all this stuff, and it's like, what on earth is he talking about? And yeah, so the first time, the stuff that really registers is basically the fairy tale's ending, and it's this kind of thing. It triggers the response. You kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that, and then sprinkled in there are these little things to make you go, wait, what? I don't. That wasn't in the text. I did. Yeah. Shouldn't you be at school? Shouldn't I have a lawyer? Yeah, this is not the usual Red Riding Hood. It's the woods, chief. We don't have a downtime. Did you lose some weight? No, didn't think so. I love Flipper's dancing. I usually wear the hood. And tasing Wolf. And, right at the start of Red's version of the story is, established that Red wants out of the woods. Very nicely set up. And I actually hadn't thought about this while noting, but that is very Disney. The I Want song, I think, is, either that's what it's called or that's what Lindsay Ellis calls it. But yeah. Boygo does look really cute. Like, the design they really made, which makes it all the funnier once he starts cackling maniacally and describing all these awful things that his plan involves. If anyone would know what to do, she would. I don't know what to do. Yeah, I'm not going to do imitations for every single line. And here, Granny just looks like she's not really listening and doesn't make time for Red. She's like, oh, gotta go, my story's starting, and it's like, she really needs to, this is clearly important, and it's like, a lot of, elderly relatives don't necessarily think that the children in the family, they're maybe a little dismissive. And I'm not, sometimes they have reason to be. And I love Red causing a car crash. There are a lot. Honestly, I have to wonder if, like, what do the directors and writers have against cars? Because they smash up and like vandalize so many cars in this. It's wild. Not today. And Red's a badass. Yeah. And the branches are really convenient for landing. Yeah, gravity's working. She makes some good goodies. I'll get you and your little granny too. And Japheth is introduced rocking back and forth on his horns. And they talk about that in the either DVD or DVD extra or commentary track, I forget. That they really wanted to introduce him rocking on the horns, but then they also wanted him to be walking around, and clearly the rocking horns are too big for that. Then they came up with the idea of him exchanging horns, and thus solved that problem, and I'm really glad they did, because it's such a fun element, this whole thing. First, when you see him, it's again this thing with the, like with Granny, the first time you see them, the first impression you get is, oh, it's cute, relatively slow-moving, elderly, you know, and then off come the horns as he's running around putting different horns on. And this, yeah. And that he can't not sing because of the spell 37 years ago, but then he does talk a little, and then he tries to cover it up by starting to sing the thing he said, and yeah. And my granny's in trouble. I love Red talking over the singing, and she's just immediately annoyed with him. And, you know, personally, I was never annoyed with him, but I do get that part of the fun, you know, part of what makes him funny is that he can be annoying. But yeah, and and there you also have the kind of sarcasm of it, and the fact that she is annoyed with him, even if the audience isn't, makes him funnier, because it is this thing of, like, you know, this is the like, so many movies like this have this sort of thing where the protagonist meets this kind of quirky character, and the quirky character, you know, and they maybe need help from the quirky character or something, and the quirky character does his quirky thing, and the protagonist just kind of waits it out, or, you know, waits for the quirky character to, you know, finish his sentence fully, and then explains, and we get, and here they do the quirk, but they also have the protagonist like, no, stop singing, look, I have the, can you just point on the map with it? You know, she's like, this is serious, we have to get, and he's like constantly singing, and yeah, I love him going through all the horns, you know, horns for his keys, horns to put on, to turn on the TV, and horns to hang his horns on, I think was one of them. And then you have the one bit where Red's got horns and she's just looking so annoyed. It's just, yeah. I do not feel prepared. And he yodels in fear because he can't scream, he can't not sing, so he yodels in fear, and yeah. I think in general, people yodeling are afraid that people are going to hear the yodeling and come after them. And she thinks she sees Granny in the air, but it must be like a vision or something, it can't be real. And then her hood is a parachute. That's just so, and the movie, you know, it lingers on the parachute for several seconds. It's not this just 1 second gag. It's just, yeah, I was prepared. And I love rewinding Paul Bunyan with, like, and then the X-Man came through the window. No, not yet. And they rewind, and he goes back out through the. They talk about on maybe the commentary track about they were worried about doing that too much. I don't think they did it too much at all. I think it was the right amount. And, you know, then the X-Man came through the window and he crashes through, and he was screaming, like a maniac. It's as if the Paul in the, you know, in the visual representation of her retelling her version is like an actor who needs to be directed. You know, he was like, he came in late, he wasn't given a copy of the script, so he just, okay, so I do this, then I do this, oh, I do this, you know, it's just, yeah. And the Kill Bill Volume 1 parody is Wolf and Red pass each other. I was gonna go with Greg. And with Wolf's voiceover, because he's suspicious of her, suddenly Red, even with the softly replayed song of hers, it's kind of looks sinister. I love Twitchy. And Wolf is literally talking to a sheep like a cop talking to an informant. And you've got the, you know, he's got slicked back hair. And what? I don't know anything about that. Passes him money. Oh yeah, yeah. And the thing, you know, you look tasty. Why you gotta do that to me? You wouldn't be pulling wool over my eyes, would you? Haha, very funny. Do you mind? Oh, sorry. And at first it's like, who is he listening to? He's pointing it down. who could possibly? Oh, it's just that idea also that these tiny little, that their speaking would be magnified enough that he can clearly hear what they're saying, and their conversation by itself is not necessarily all that funny. It's a perfectly regular conversation, like, but it's funny that we don't know who's talking, and then it's like, excuse me, privacy. Just the idea of these little animals looking up at a wolf and asking him not to listen in on their conversation. Just, yeah. And what Wolf overhears from Red in the cable car does sound sinister. It sounds like she's talking about her evil plan. So you get why he thinks, yeah. And the growling from Wolf when it's just his eyes, that's his stomach growling. And he has to go talk to her because Twitchy needs to fix the camera before they can follow her. So yeah, she says it's kind of creepy, and yeah, it kind of is. But then, once you see his part of, and then also they talk about how he's supposed to be a lot like the Fletch character, Chevy Chase's Fletch character. And yeah, it is. Yeah, suddenly something goes wrong, and he has to try to cover for it by, like, kind of bugging someone with questions and such. Just, yeah. It's been ages since I watched those movies, but that's as far as I remember, at least. And, Wolf screamed because Twitchy accidentally caught his tail while repairing the camera. And he uses a wolf to make it pass. Actually, yeah, that's there are two distinct Wile E. Coyote using the wolf. Oh, is it Roadrunner or Wile E. Coyote? Yeah, it's definitely a Looney Tunes thing. Not cool. And he doesn't fall until he realizes. Very Wile E. Coyote. What? They're evil? I'll prove it. Watch me pull myself out of a hat. And then that lemonade ferments. Never trust a bunny. And the one dynamite lights through. Oh, I found a candle. Oh, light it up. What kind of candle is that? Dinamite. Must be Italian. It's like, oh, get rid of get rid of the thing. But I need it. And they drop it, and it rolls past all the other dynamite and lights all the fuses. And then you have this brief animation of him like chucking one dynamite, one stick of dynamite after another. And wait, is it stick? When it's only one, anyway. And then you realize that's why the mining cart, suddenly they couldn't, Red and Japheth were launched into the air because they couldn't keep going on the track because it was blown up by the, yeah. And you hear something? Candygram. And the disguise is granny merchandise. And Wolf realizes he doesn't sound like Granny, but they're out of time. It's not too cynical, but it's a great little thing of, when you really stop to think of it, how could a wolf possibly convince a girl that, that he was actually her grandmother? And if you accept this kind of thing of like the magical thinking of, is it called skin changers? Yeah, but in this in this, a lot of the way fairly realistic, laws of physics, do apply a lot of the time and such. Yeah, you stop to think, he doesn't sound even remotely like, and he's not stupid, he realizes that, but they're out of time. and he tosses Twitchy into the closet onto the tied up Granny, and we already knew that she was tied up in the closet, but we didn't know that he was going to toss Twitchy in there. And yeah, and then in Granny's retelling, we actually see them struggling in there. Yeah. You're saying Granny was already tied up? Yeah, why? To look innocent. And Paul Bunyan, because Bunyan cream. And we see Red behind Paul to place us chronologically. And we did see him before, you know, and it's the exact same. He looks sad both times. But the first time, we don't, you know, we don't keep thinking of it because it doesn't really tell us anything at that point. But yeah, here we know exactly where we are, which was also what was done in the Wolf version, where we see Red going around singing also. So yeah. Was she singing when passing his face? Yeah, anyway. And we have more yodeling, and I think this was actually, I forget if it was a negative or a positive, but I think one of the reviewers mentioned there was more than one song that involved yodeling. And yeah, that's because I'm not going to claim that yodeling is necessarily automatically always funny, but it is in this movie and in Weird Al songs. They stole everything. And Boingo just happens to be right there. Worked for that little guy. I had always heard about callbacks, and he's got the heavenly light. Which is, again, you know, that's, yeah, he's an actor. He wants a callback to him. That's like heaven. And it's distinct. It's very different from the fairy tale. You know, the woodsman. Yeah, he's career woodsman, as, or yeah. Tell him I said hello. And the moment he realizes how to use an axe, he's chopping down trees like there's no tomorrow. Sorry about that. And he gets to the really big tree, and he just keeps chopping, and like until into the night, and he's like exhausted, and he's still just. At some point, you should probably call it a day and just think, okay, that's enough, you know. And that's also, you know, by the time the four of them meet in Granny's house, yeah, at that point it is in the evening, so he spent all those hours. You know, the others go on these other kind of, you know, he actually spends almost the entirety of his version of the story chopping down trees in the woods, where the others, yeah, go different places and do different things, meet characters, and yeah. And, you know, the tree falls, and someone's around to hear it. I got a call back. No, really, unlawfully delicious. Says so right on the bag. I love the montage of Granny doing extreme sports. And those were for skis. They weren't like pins for knitting. Pins? Yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. And they do, you know, when you first see them, you know, she's like, oh, gotta go, my stores are starting up. They legitimately look like they're for knitting, and now we see they're, I forget what they're called. I'm not a skier. You know, yeah, and yeah, you accept them as, oh, they are for skiing. What up, my homies? Then put some X's and O's and a smiley face. And Granny loses one ski, and they're fencing while skiing. And then the one ski gets used as a snowboard. Granny's dual-wielding snowballs, and You know, she's got the sleeve. It's like an automatic firing snowballs, and uses her snowboard as a shield, a la Mission Impossible 2 with the motorcycle. And she bungee jumps to safety. And I love the thing where she, you know, all of them just briefly pass the fisherman at one, not all of them, at one point or another. And she's, good afternoon. You know, and she's up there. She's like, ah, oh, heck, you know, and she throws the grenades, causing the avalanche. And we see when red is, when wolf is, and you've got the, you know, Granny wins landslide. And that's how Granny appeared to Red. And it was at this point that I was completely certain Granny is Rico Rodriguez. Honestly, since she isn't a playable character via DLC in Just Cause 2 and or 3, I am very disappointed, and I really hope they fix that by the fourth one. I suppose there's still some chance they might release more DLC for the third one. Unlikely for the second one. You think Granny would mind if I went through her garbage? He is a raccoon. Or a garbage panda. Of course you do. You're a pucket. I don't know what that means anymore. And it legitimately works as drama. You know, these were the first things set up. Granny is this, you know, she's this elderly, she's sweet, but she doesn't necessarily take Red all that seriously. And Red wants out of the woods, but then there by the end, yeah. No, it's not her. She's not wearing the hood, as was set up earlier. I really do love how they use the hood. You know, she has birds flying in it that we already see. We already saw them carrying her. You know, they carry the bike. You know, and yeah, you know, so they carry the hood to trick the wolf into thinking that's her, and then, you know, she doesn't wear it when she leaves. You know, that's her leaving behind the legacy that, yeah. And, you know, later we see Boingo wearing it, which is where we're like, oh, is that really Red stealing the thing? Yeah. And I love that, you know, red is blue. Doesn't make much sense, but red is blue. She flew cheesecake over the Atlantic. And just from all times, there are puckets making desserts. Even a cave, you know, caveman painting, yeah. Granny, I can read. It says Battle of the Iron Cage Gladiators, and you get the brief, like, snapshots of that. Just, yeah. If there's two things your granny doesn't do, it's lie and play extreme sports. That literally couldn't be more untrue, unless she isn't even your granny, isn't she? Just, yeah, you know, and it's like the thing where, yeah, back when Red first saw it, it was like, yeah, I'm sure it's just silly, pointless, you know. It's a misunderstanding of some kind, but then, you know, the fact that she's thinking back to it now, it's like, yeah. And then we see Red, or someone wearing Red's hood, stealing the recipes. And also cute, you know, walkie-talkie gags. Really, if you got the walkie-talk, if you don't have the walkie, don't talk. You know, just, yeah. And as one of the directors points out on the commentary track, Flippers is just messing with their heads. He knows it's not one of them, so it's just, yeah. But it's that thing at the end of, like, you know, yes, it would have to be someone like you. And then it's, oh, no, of course it's not you. Because the person who did it would have to have that as you do. And just, yeah. Talk about profiling. Where is she anyway? And the Boingo ear reveal. And that's also, I mean, the first time you see it, you don't necessarily think about it, but yeah, you know, if Boingo put Red's hood on over the ears, yeah, from behind and from the sides, it would look more or less like Red, because The ears are ridiculously tall. But yeah, you know, you have the ear reveal and got the thunderclap. Never trust a bunny. Never trust a bunny. Get a sketch artist. No, make it a cartoonist. And the tank treads on the schnitzel truck. And they actually they talk in on the commentary track. They're like, I don't know how that's gonna actually change it. But you know, it makes it look more sinister. And you know, obviously, it wouldn't be as effective if we just saw them having put the wheels back on the schnitzel truck. Drink up. I love Twitchy on caffeine. The especially that first little bit where his head goes all crazy and what have I done? Can I have coffee? Not until you're older, dear. If she's alive, she'll be back. Okay, point solved. That's almost a direct quote from Terminator 3. Yeah. And Red followed them, and you know she clung to the back of the cable car, which you know, and a little later you see Granny climbing the wall of the cave. So yeah, again, there's definitely a legacy there. Yeah. You've spoiled the surprise. You're the bandit. Surprise! Because I like you. And the Matrix style fight, and you know, just hit and suddenly the ears are not just fluffy and cute, they're like, you know, weapons, and fear the ear. And Boingo has a giant crane and a lair with a lair, sweet lair. You know, yeah. That's not a metaphor, literally blow them away. I love the dancing minions. He's standing right behind me, isn't he? Timmy's stuck in the well. Wait a minute. He seems to be speaking words of some kind. See, that's scary. That's good. And Wolf plays to Boingo's ego, or the Boingo, if you will. And yeah, you know, see Granny climbing up the wall behind. You know, the moment. And it literally, Paul is like, that's the only line he knows, you know, he's memorized so he's like, a boss? Bunyan, you know, just, yeah, and Wolf gets, you know, comes in with the save, and, you know, the first moment is like, you know, you might just barely have time to think, well, what's Wolf gonna accomplish by pretending? And then you see Granny climbing the wall. So, you know, they do straight up, they had a plan and they're executing it. And, you know, it is really, really good that Wolf was ready to come in with the save there. And I kind of realized once I'd watched the whole thing, ultimately Paul doesn't contribute all that much to hear the end. You know, I mean, he's funny, and I'm glad he's there, but he ultimately doesn't accomplish very much. But he wasn't invited to be an agent at the end, was he? Because he got his dream. He got to join the Yodel. He got a callback, and yeah, he ended up traveling with the Yodel. Yeah, but he is in the sequel, so I guess it's possible that he does join the team, or maybe he has a subplot or something. And if they do give him something, you know, I mean, he's very physically capable. He doesn't want to use it to hurt anyone, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't be useful. And the commentary makes it clear that is sweat from off Granny's brow that falls, you know. And the rolling pin is a weapon and a gadget in her hands. Extreme biking, and she rings the bell. And riding the wire on the little, excuse me, what's it called? Muffin tin kind of thing, yeah. We'll take the truck. Man, Twitchy's all well-spoken when it's slowed down. Awesome explosion. And it blows fish up to the fisherman. See, all things come to those who wait. and they ride the wire right into the cop car. Yeah. Paul, what is your problem with that poor hedgehog's car? And Japeth is delivering now, and Twitch is jonesing for more coffee. And that is a really great sequel hook with the happily ever after agency that, yeah. Let's see. Sequel. And IMDb points out, over the credits, there are various images of Granny Puckett the Wolf, Red, and Nikki Flippers in costumes, and I guess those are supposed to be from missions or something. I haven't watched Hoodwinked 2. Crap, it has some subtitle. I forget. But yeah, I haven't watched it. I might. It's not currently streaming on Blockbuster. It's gotten very negative reviews, but then again, so did this, although worse reviews for that one. The DVD is inexpensive, so yeah, I don't know. I might. Anyway, I could imagine that it's not as good. Just briefly, apparently the director, it was the same people writing it, but the director maybe, I think one of the directors and writers of this one said that the director of the second one took it in a direction he wouldn't have, and that was, yeah. But yeah, I could imagine it's not as good. It may be better as something the audience imagines, or maybe a licensed game. One thing is the chronological structure. Will it mimic that of this? That might feel gimmicky. Will it be straightforward? Then it might, not feel like this one enough as, to satisfy as a sequel. And, can it reveal unexpected twists about the main cast, which is a huge part of this one, yeah, I think I already talked about how a sequel might go full Tarantino, and that is a way I could see it working. But yeah, I know almost nothing about the sequel. I just know that they recast a couple of the characters, and that most of the main characters do return. Now, from Wikipedia, a sequel, Hoodwinked to Hood vs. Evil, cute, was released on April 29th, 2011. It was first announced in January 2006. In February, Corey Edwards, Todd Edwards, and Tony Leach explained that although they would be writing the screenplay, they would not return to direct. Corey Edwards later elaborated on his decision, explaining he had a negative experience working with some of the first film's key players and felt he had been poorly treated by them, and he also cited concerns over being confined to animation and stated he felt it would be a lateral move to direct a sequel to his first film as his second film, and that makes a lot of sense. And, I don't know if ultimately, I could imagine that, if the new director didn't do all that well with the material, I could totally imagine that the three directors of this one would have done a better job. But yeah, if you don't want to confine yourself, yeah. In March 2007, Edwards announced that Mike Disa had been hired to direct the sequel and expressed enthusiasm over his involvement, saying that he has a real passion for the film and a devotion to maintaining the Hoodwinked world. He wants to do the sequel justice and really gets what we're trying to do. So clearly it's not that they didn't care about still making the three of them, three directors of this one. Although much of the first film's cast returned for the sequel, Anne Hathaway was replaced by Hayden Panettiere in the role of Red, and Jim Belushi was replaced by Martin Short in the role of Crook the Woodsman. And I will say, I could imagine that, he's not always annoying, but Martin Short does, frequently annoying. And Canbar Entertainment initially intended to finance production of the sequel independently as done with the first film, but entered into a co-financing agreement proposed by the Weinstein Company. The film was initially scheduled to be released on January 15th, 2010, but in December 2009, the Weinstein Company postponed the film's release date indefinitely And details. Yeah, the second film was a financial failure, earning 16.9 million worldwide, only about half of its budget. And unfortunately, that does mean that a third movie or a licensed game is unlikely. DLC missions, maybe fan made for Just Cause 3 or 4. Definitely, yeah. Let's see. Critical reception to the film was almost universally negative, with a Rotten score of 11% across 61 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, a score of 20 out of 100 on Metacritic. Corey Edwards expressed disappointment with the finished film, indicating that it was heavily altered from the original script, and saying it was deflating to give this thing away and watch others run with it in ways that I would not. And yeah. It's really too bad. It sounded like they liked writing the film and the commentary track for this. And they bring up, for example, that it was fun for, I forget if they had written it or they were going to or whatever, but they talked about, having fun with bringing making the characters, act in unison, do things together, where in this they barely have a chance to get together. They don't spend a lot of time working together in this. The overall main cast, several of the main cast have at least one supporting player who comes in. Wolf has Twitchy, and Boingo keeps appearing and only later reveals that he is also a major character. He appears to be a minor, a supporting player until then, but then we find out he's the antagonist. But bringing them together, letting them play off each other, which there's a lot of potential for because there's a lot to these characters. So yeah, I do think that makes a ton of sense, and that is something that a sequel could really do. Now, analysis. And this is from Wikipedia. In February of 2006, author Timothy Sexton wrote an article titled Hoodwinked, a postmodern examination of the dangers of runaway capitalism for Associated Content, in which he posited that Hoodwinked was one of the first postmodern animated films and also carried political undertones. He argued that the relative nature of truth was shown by revealing deviations from the original fairy tale as the film explored the story from each of the central characters' point of view, calling Hoodwinked the most subversive movie released nationwide since Fahrenheit 9/11. Sexton went on to interpret the film as a critique on the free enterprise system, drew comparisons between the film's villain and the typical American business owner, going so far as to say that the character was clearly based on people like Bill Gates and Sam Walton. In Sexton's view, the film exposed the flaws of capitalism, showing that if left unregulated, business owners will establish monopolies and eliminate competition. Now, the film's director and co-writer Corey Edwards was surprised by Sexton's interpretation and denied that the film intentionally carried any political messages. He explained that he and the other filmmakers were simply drawing from the evil schemes common of James Bond films, Bugs Bunny cartoons, and the A-Team. And and just briefly, I do think that is, really to some extent, all of those were about that. Obviously those weren't based on the people mentioned before, the Bill Gates, but it's not some completely new idea, but the movie does. I totally see how he got that idea, but James Bond, Bugs Bunny, and the A-Team, the villains of these are this kind of person doing this kind of thing, because it has been a danger within capitalistic societies. And I'm not going to talk about capitalism versus socialism, although unless you skip to this part, if you watch the part where I talked about Brewster's Millions, you can probably tell where I am on the. Yeah, I do not believe that completely unregulated capitalism will, but yeah. Anyway, to get back to Corey Edwards, wrote, "If Mr. Sexton sees my movie as a sermon against megacorporations monopolizing America, that's fine, but our villain is just as easily the face of every dictator in history, or every schoolyard bully who is compensating for low self-esteem, or any mafia boss who dominates by either absorbing or wiping out his competition." And yeah, I'd have to agree. Hey, if you look at an abstract painting and see the devil in a red splotch, that's your prerogative. I guess a movie's message is only partially supplied by the filmmaker. In May 2007, Time magazine ran an article by James Poniewaznik titled "Is Shrek Bad for Kids?", which considered the negative effects on children being raised with fairy tale satires instead of the original stories. And the writer mentioned Hoodwinked, writing, "I thought Hoodwinked was, and most of the Shrek series, were hilarious. But even if you ultimately reject their messages, old school fairy tales are part of our culture and vocabulary. There's something a little sad about kids growing up in a culture where their fairy tales come pre-satirized, the skepticism, critique, and revision having been done for them by the mama birds of Hollywood." Corey Edwards wrote into the magazine, expressing his similar sentiments in writing, "As the writer-director of Hoodwinked, it may surprise you that I couldn't agree more with James's article. Even as I was making the film, I asked myself the same question. Are we parodying something that kids should have the chance to experience first, unparodied? We went to great lengths to distance our films from Shrek's humor, and no, I don't think Shrek considers kids. I would hope that Hoodwinked and its sequels will be seen as trying to do something genuine with its characters, rather than look for the next joke at the expense of innocence." Wow, he really did not like Shrek 1, did he? "We all need the real folklore fairy tales, whether we admit it or not." Shrek 1 and this do both each have one or more family-friendly messages. I won't give Shrek 1's away here for those who haven't watched it yet, but, this movie is against monopolies, judging based on appearances, trusting rabbits. Now, I suppose that brings us to on plot. The story takes place over a single 24-hour day, retold several times from different perspectives. Now from IMDb, during the scene when Mr. Flipper is explaining who the bandit is and Granny is signing Boingo's clipboard, on the other side is a list of things to do, which are: take down Muffin Man, ruin Red, act cute and fuzzy, steal recipe book, send Wolf on goose chase, pick up dry cleaning, pay evil ski team, pay gas bill, call mom, and finish lair. Which, yeah, that's very nice. And, Granny's extreme sports name, Triple G, is a spoof of the Vin Diesel movie Triple X, where he plays an extreme sports athlete with the nickname of Triple X. And yes, that was stupid in 2002 as well. The 3 G's she has tattooed on to the back of her neck is a spoof of the 3 X's Xander has on his neck. And, this movie went into production in the summer of 2002, which explains why Triple X is parodied, which was kind of dated by 2005, which is too bad because it's a major character. But don't get me wrong, I do absolutely love the Triple G stuff. But I do think that maybe there should have been like some kind of thing where, the tattoos on the back of her neck, has Red never noticed those? What does she think that stands for? Isn't she bothered by her granny having a tattoo? It seems like there should maybe have been like, maybe as, Granny starts to walk off or something, Flippers walks over to her and, like, pretends to be like a gentleman, like helping her walk through the room. And at first it's like, oh, what a gentleman. And then he grabs one of her arms and starts to lead her over, and then he puts his hand on the back of her neck and rips off a little, like, skin colored band-aid or something covering that tattoo, and then you have that exchange, or that line. Boingo's chief henchman looks and talks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but is named Dolph, a nod to Schwarzenegger's tough guy competitor, Dolph Lundgren. The scene where Bongo is this IMDb, I think it's trivia. The scene where Boingo is admonishing his henchman Keith that his name isn't scary enough and he should change it to Boris was not scripted. It was ad-libbed by Andy Dick while recording his lines. He apparently did a lot of ad-libbing, and I absolutely love it. The dialogue is ironic because the names mean almost the same thing. Keith is Scottish Gaelic and means from the battlefield. Boris is Slavic and means battler or warrior. So yeah, I don't know if Andy Dick knew that when he did the, yeah. And let's see. And the mole's costumes during the first song are a reference to the village people. Some of the text within the film's pop-up book is actually that of Charles Perrault's original version of the classic Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale. And the label on the spray can that Red uses on the wolf reads, "Wolf Away Spray." And during the interrogation, both Red and Wolf are offering different versions of the same story. Both insist they're innocent of wrongdoing, and both are wearing hoods. Wolf is wearing an athletic hoodie. Both their hoods are primary colors. In every way, they are in competition with each other. It's quite clever. One of the locations on the Goats map is Sam Hill, a common epithet used especially when one is lost. And the new director of the commercial is a satire of the Geico gecko. Other locations on Jack of the Goats map are Murky Slough, Boulder Dash, Puckett Grove, and Canbar Canyon. Canbar is the name of the production company that made the movie. And the character of the wolf seems to be patterned after Chevy Chase's Fletch character. Investigative reporter, uses disguise to get information, and even his theme music is very much like what you hear in Fletch. And the first encounter between Red and Wolf is told twice using exactly the same dialogue, but the lighting is different to suggest the different viewpoints of the two characters. And it really is, I mean, that is a good thing to teach children even early on. Witness statements are very, very... You cannot put too much trust into them because people interpret what they see, even if they don't think they're interpreting what they see. Let's see. Characters. I did not intend for that pun. Anne Hathaway as Red Puckett, and she uses a lot of her range in this, sweet as you expect from the character of Red, sarcastic, annoyed, angry. I base that mainly on her as, Catwoman, and in some in Interstellar. I have not watched very many Anne Hathaway movies. I'm not really in the, core demographic of her, and no girlfriend of mine who has forced me to watch movies of hers. I don't have a problem with her. I'm glad there's someone that, young girls can really enjoy watching movies with. And Glenn Close as Granny Puckett with hair as tall as Marge Simpson's, to quote one of the directors. And the trailer says over a sweet grandmother who's not so sweet, and her theme song is rap, and it has kid-friendly lyrics, and G, you know, as for Granny and for Gangsta, and she's got homies, and the three G's tattooed on the back of her neck are appropriate, since there's 3 strikes against her. And, you know, she's a badass. You've got the John Woo-style snowball fight. And Jim Belushi as Crook the Woodsman, so stupid that he doesn't know how an axe works. Yes, I realized I kept calling him Paul. I forgot that it was Kirk. That Paul was the character he was playing in the ad, but he wanted to play in the ad. But anyway, yeah, he's so stupid that he doesn't know how an axe works. And the directors on the commentary track compare him to Homer Simpson in sheer stupidity. And the trailer says, "And a lumberjack who doesn't know jack." And this is one of the only cases where I will actually say, not only is Jim Belushi genuinely trying to be funny, he succeeds. And as they point out in the commentary track, the Schnitzel kids are super creepy. Just the faces and the eyes, yeah. And Patrick Warburton as Wolf W. Wolf. And yeah, Warburton, as usual, is hilarious in the way that he is. The deadpan, the deep voice, and yeah. And the trailer says, "A big bad wolf who's not so bad." And let's see, it's just a list of... Oh, that's right, it's Chaz Palminteri as Woolworth. I knew I recognized the voice, just absolutely perfectly cast, yeah. And Andy Dick as Boingo. I absolutely love him in this, and in at least some other things I've seen him. You know, Road Trip, and I want to say there's other stuff. Yeah, he's funny in the Ben Stiller Show. When the Ben Stiller Show is funny, which it sometimes is, but yeah, I absolutely love him in this. And you know, he's not in a lot of Road Trip, but you remember yeah. And you know, the moment you meet Boingo, he introduces the notion that recipes are being stolen. So we meet him and the evil plot at the same time, subtly connecting the two in our minds. And you know, not long after, he says, you know, "Work for that little guy." Excuse me. And most of the characters are memorable, and honestly, there's not a single one I would remove. Now, pre-production. In an effort to save costs, the film's cast was originally going to be composed mostly of friends and family members of the filmmakers. Corin Todd brought in their cousin Ty Edwards to play Dolph, and turned to their friend, I almost said turned their friend into Jimmy Lizard. And and Japheth was written specifically for Benji Gaither, the son of gospel music singers Bill and Gloria Gaither. So yeah, you know, he's got the singing and yeah. And he had been a friend of the Edwards brothers since childhood, and Corey's short film Wobots had been produced through his animation studio Live Bait Productions. Corey's wife Vicky was given the role of skunk reporter, and while some consideration was initially given to having an adult play the child woodpecker Quill, the role was instead given to producer David K. Lundgren's daughter, Catherine. And yeah, Corey took on the role of Twitchy, and Pro Tools was used to speed up the recording of his dialogue by 50%. And yeah, and as the producers gained greater confidence in film, however, larger name actors were brought in. Patrick Warburton was the first celebrity actor to join the film, and did so purely out of a love for the script. And Corey Edwards had originally envisioned the wolf as sounding like a mixture between a young Chevy Chase and a Bill Murray. He praised Warburton's performance, saying that he made the wolf his own character. And yeah, I would have to agree, that really great. And Andy Dick, joined the cast early on, voiced Boingo. He used improvisation and approached the role differently from how it had been written, interpreting the character as victimized and unstable. And the filmmakers were enthusiastic over Dick's angle on the character, and Todd Edwards said, "What we had written was kind of stock, to be honest. But Andy Dick, well, where he was supposed to laugh, he'd be crying. Where he was supposed to yell, he'd be laughing. He just mixed it up." And again, absolutely love it. And yeah, let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna skip those sections and go to quotes. What big ears you have! All the better to hear your many criticisms. I know about houses. I built mine out of straw. I'm not an idiot. What do you do for a living, Mr. Wolf? I'm a shepherd. Who are you? I'm your grandma. Your face looks really weird, Granny. I've been sick. Your mouth doesn't move when you talk. Plastic surgery. Grandma's had a little work done. The song was catchy, but the choreography was terrible. What's with the handcuffs on the little girl? Her wrists can slip right out. How about a cage? Bring in the cage. I was being sarcastic. This is sarcasm. Strike the cage. I don't know what to do. I mean, should I call her? Well, she is keeping seeing other people, probably keeping her options open. You should do this thing. Oh, there. Do you mind? It would seem that all of you came together tonight by mistake. Maybe you naughty neighbors butted heads so we could get to the real truth. The Goody Bandit. That's right, the bandit's still at large. There's been a lot of finger pointing tonight, but now all fingers point to the bandit. Not my finger. Oh no, you were just out damaging forest property, cutting down the redwoods we all call home. Big guy like you could probably take whatever you want from little goody-loving creatures, couldn't you? But someone robbed me. Have we lost track of that? That's right, someone did. Maybe a snack food competitor. Right, Granny? Now hold on a pea-picking minute. I may lead a dull life full of secrets and deception, but there's no reason to be suspicious. A woman like you could have a lot to gain stealing all those recipes. And that's how she makes her goodies so good, eh? Or she could just be another victim of a hungry wolf. Ah, the wolf did it. Talk about profiling. Why should we trust someone who has disguises for a living? Maybe he's not a wolf at all. You got me. I'm a poodle. I just haven't been to the barber shop in a long time. Is this all a big joke to you? I just follow the girl here. You leave my granddaughter alone. Yes, now we get to Little Red, the girl with the basket on the run. Where is she anyway? I love the, what can I say, I was raised by wolves, and then the Ken Burns documentary thing, yeah. This looks pretty open and shut. Little Miss Rosie keeps making covert deliveries to the Goody Tycoon. Wolfie tries to eat them both, and Crazy Flannel Pants with the axe here busts in, swinging vigilante style. Take him downtown, boys. It's the Woods, Chief. We don't have a downtown. You know what I mean. Just book him. Sweet tea and cookies. We've got to do something. I know. The song was catchy, but the choreography was terrible. Nicky Flibbers, what are you doing here? This is my case. Well, someone hibernated on the wrong side of the cave. I saw the lights, thought the circus was in town. Now, of course, I see I was right. Well, you're too late, Nicky. I've got this case wrapped up nice and tight. Is that right? Yeah. They've got this all wrong, Mr. Flippers. Oh, I don't know. You look pretty dangerous to me. What's your name? Red. Why do they call you that? Why do they call you Flippers? No reason. They call me Red because of this red hood I wear. What about when you're not wearing it? I usually wear it. I know I'm not doing voices for the cops. I'm sorry. I don't remember who does which voice for the cops. I'd just be mixing it up. Excuse me. Yeah. Twitchy lines, I cannot speak that fast. Yep, that settles it. We've got our bandit. Ah, could be. I'd like to count my chickens after they hatch. Chickens? You've got to admit, a wolf stopping kids in the middle of the forest, that's pretty creepy. Yeah, that's right, but we don't arrest people for being creepy. Yeah, Bruce, you know that guy we got in the tank? The creepy one? Yeah, better let him go. Little Red, processing? Yeah, yes, I know, a good kid, not like that Bo Peep, got put up an invisible fence, tasted metal fillings for a week. As God is my witness, you will learn to speak. Let me level with you. You're an evil genius, right? Well, I don't know. I would say genius. You know, I was asked to join Mensa. Well, you got yourself an evil lair in a mountain cave. That's standard. But see, most masters of evil that we deal with are up to evil genius code. Are you familiar with the code? You know, I'm more of a do-it-yourself kind of guy. Yeah, I understand. Are you thinking about putting in a laser? I don't know. I don't. Do you think I should? Well, it's standard equipment for a cave lair. I'm not saying you're gonna sap someone with it today, but you gotta think about the future. Those things they have to be calibrated. The criminal you are looking for cannot be found at the bottom of the mountain. He resides at the top, in a cave fortress where my companions are trying to detain him. I think it's safe to say that our thespian friend here knows the least about anything of anyone in this room. What does that mean? Dolph, tie up the brat. Liesl, hold the book. Vincent, get the truck. And Keith, darn it, change your name, please. That's not scary, and I'm embarrassed to say it. Boris, try that. Keith, you know. Ooh, watch out for Keith. The guy's a loon. Watch it, Chief. My mama's half loon. I'm looking for Granny Puckett's house. Granny Puckett. Could you stop singing for one moment? No, I can't. I wish I could, but a mountain witch done put a spell on me 30 years ago, and now I gotta sing everything I say. Everything? That's right. You just talked just now. Oh, did I? Did I? So, when do we eat? Sure, you're hungry for failure, maybe it's out of unemployment because that's what's for lunch. We go right to the source. We gotta get to Granny's house before the kid does. Is it a surprise? Surprise for who? You're going to Granny's house to surprise Red. I mean, is it her birthday or some kind of shindig? Because I'm great at parties. Watch me pull myself out of a hat. Yeah, big surprise party. You know how to get there? Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, I know a shortcut. You hear that? He knows a shortcut. Over the woods and through the river. No, you don't want to go through the river. You'll get all wet. You see, Twitchy, you get lemons, you make lemonade. And then that lemonade goes bitter and ferments and turns to pig swill. Why couldn't I write movie reviews? That bunny was worthless, not to mention he wrote the directions on an Easter egg, which is very hard to read. Oh, we're gonna die here. Oh, come on, that's what they said at the Alamo. What is it, boy? Truck. Trouble at the mill. Is the barn on fire? The barn's on fire. The well. Timmy's stuck down in the well. You got the loot? Whoa, what big hands you have. Oh, all the better to scratch my back with. And what big ears you have. All the better to hear your many criticisms. Old people just have big ears, dear. And Granny, what big eyes you have. Are we just going to sit here and talk about how big I'm getting? You came here for a reason, didn't you? So tell old Granny what you've got in the basket. Ah, Granny, what bad breath you have. You again. What do I have to do? Get a restraining order? Settle down, little girl. And what, the schnitzel? I see you all got my message. Glad you can make it. What's going on? Well, I was wondering if you'd like to come and work for me. I could use some fresh talent like you. What kind of work are we talking about? You'd be undercover on impossible missions to faraway places. There are a lot of stories out there that need a happy ending. I'm part of a secret organization that makes sure that happens. Happily ever after agency? The woods don't go round by themselves. Dolph, where have you been, you nim-wetted Eurotrash with the... What is that, a ski mask? Yeah, I like that. See, that's scary. That's good. I want to do an expose sometime, a gallery show, maybe a coffee table book. Of course, I don't drink coffee. Maybe a China tea latte book. An avalanche is coming and I'm not prepared. In fact, if I have to say it, I must say that I'm scared. If I were talking, you'd hear just how I screamed, but since I'm only singing, I'll yodel till we're creamed. I'm sorry, what? I can't quite with the. You got something right there across your mouth. Yeah, I think that might be the ones. Oh, I just love my job. You see how it works, Dolph? You prioritize, you set your goals, you write a mission statement, you ask yourself, where do I see myself in 5 years? Oh, nice outfit, always red with you. You must be in autumn. Hey, Bongo, are you helping the Muffin Man today? Nah, he closed up shop. Someone stole all his recipes last night, and now I'm out of a job. Oh, jeez, Bongo, I'm really sorry. Are you still working the cable car? Yeah, I am, but it's not as fun as making goodies all day. Let's see. Yeah, that is all of them. Yeah, absolutely love this movie, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about it as much as I do talking about it.